Hello and welcome to another edition of Nonverbal MMA, where we read between the lines of combat sports communication here on the greatest MMA channel of all time. I'm Andrew, your favorite sociologist, and that was my announcer voice. Thank you all for being here. Today, we are going through another episode in the Jake Paul, Ben Askren boxing match saga. This one, when Ben Askren goes on Logan Paul's show, Impaulsive, basically into enemy territory and absolutely kills it. He endears himself to these guys, winds up holding court with him. And it's so good. They develop such a rapport. It gets physical at one part. They're all laughing together. And at the end, when the video from Logan's little brother comes in that they're all supposed to be pulling for, it is so bad. We're going to see the reactions on the crew's faces, and we'll realize Ben actually saves the day for the show, whether he realized it or not. I think he probably had something to do with it. But Ben's comments on that actually are able to derail a potential disaster for the Impaulsive show and for Logan. It's really crazy. His performance and the reason that he is able to do what he does is because he's confident, comfortable in his own skin, and willing to acknowledge his vulnerabilities. And that disarms them completely. We're going to take a look at it, and we're going to take a look at how hostile it was really intended to be right here from the beginning. As soon as Ben sits down, this is the first major thing that Logan says to him during the program.
Ben, this one hits close to home. Like, obviously, you're fighting my brother. You're fighting my blood.
Yes.
On April 17th.
I mean, that should be normal for you. You fought him probably plenty of times.
We had one actual physical fist altercation, but it's interesting because, you know, I want to be a good podcast host. I want to be respectful of our guests,
Sure.
but in a way, you're also fighting me because I'm the brother. Well, he's my blood. I have to love and support him no matter how ridiculous he could be sometimes. That's my family. You only got one of those.
Yeah.
And so I have to ride with Jake, obviously. So, I mean,
Of course.
Obviously this one hits close to home. Besides this podcast, this is probably the closest you'll get to fighting Jake.
Really?
Minus on April 17th.
Yeah.
So Logan starts out and immediately lays it down that, of course, he's going to try to be a good podcast host, but he's absolutely pulling for his brother, his blood, Jake. And this is going to be the closest Ben gets to actually fighting him. Well, if that's true, Jake really needs to worry because he does a masterful job handling this. And let's take a look at how he handles the first insult, the one against his wife.
I think, and you've realized this by now, Jake is like, he's a marketer. He's here to sell the fight.
Yes.
He's here to make headlines. He's here to clown you, dog you in any possible way you can. He called your wife thick.
Yeah,
Right.
I thought it was hilarious.
Thick.
I mean, I didn't really understand. Maybe it's a generous thing, or maybe it's just because I have a lot of security in my relationship, but I didn't really see how that could be offensive. Like, I find her attractive as well.
Like water off a duck's back. What's that? The Buddha says, if you like something, someone else will probably like it too. So you think his wife is good looking? Well, so does he. It's probably one of the reasons he married her. And he's secure enough in the relationship to know that Jake can look at the menu all he wants, but he's never going to be able to order off of it, to use that metaphor. So what's the big deal? Now, moving on, we get the first major combat-related question from Mike, the sidekick of Logan Paul's that's sitting on his side. George is the one, I think, that's next to Ben. And he juxtaposes Ben's strengths in wrestling versus Jake Paul's in boxing. And let's see how it goes and then what Ben's response is like.
As a ground guy, you've historically been looked at as one of the better wrestlers, correct? In the sport. What is your plan to try to match someone who has been training in the boxing world for the past 3+ years and obviously has put together quite a capability when it comes to at least the technical approach and aspects of the sport?
Yeah, so I always think with something like this and like wrestling, MMA, whatever it is, right? There's the skill of whatever you're doing. There's also the skill of being a competitor.
So he, of course, asks, how is he going to match him given the skill versus the skill, boxing versus wrestling? And Ben, the important thing that he does is he acknowledges that Jake may have some skill in the boxing, but he brings up what he believes is a more important point, a more important skill, a more important experience, and really lays it down.
And, he's only fought 2 times against guys who weren't really all that high level. And so his skill as a combat athlete probably is not that high yet. And it's going to take a while to get there. And you see this even with guys in the UFC, they have 10, 15 fights and they still make stupid mistakes because they get in a pressure situation. There's adversity and they don't know how to handle it yet. And then you see them years later, right? And they handle that adversity a lot differently. They're more mature and they've been through it. And so I've been through that for the last, I've been competing at a high level in wrestling since we'll say 17, 18 years old. I've been competing at, a really high national level. So I've been through tons of adversity. And so it's hey, I may not have the boxing skill, but that doesn't mean I can't get in there and fight somebody, right? I've been fighting people for 20 years.
It's great. So he acknowledges the skill, but then goes into the argument of why the skill that he's talking about, experience that take people years in the octagon, in the UFC before you get that. That is why he believes he will win. And of course, Logan, for his brother's sake, has to throw cold water on it immediately. And let's see how Ben reacts to this cold water getting thrown on it. Watch how he first again acknowledges what Logan has to say as having the possibility of being true, and then again giving his reason. And it's these little acknowledgments of not going into an immediate dispute, but yeah, you might be the case that really helps a whole heck of a lot with him endearing himself, and he's acknowledging his vulnerabilities at the same time. Yeah, it's something that could happen. I could lose, however small that chance. But
doesn't mean that, but it might mean that you might not win.
There's a chance. So here's how I think about it. If he's actually a really good boxer, right? I went and was sparring with someone good, and what was that damn? He challenged for world title at Freddy's. Okay. And it's I have no illusion that I'm as good as you at boxing. I am not going to beat you in a boxing match. If Jake's really, really good, I'm probably not going to beat him, right? But I think he's probably not really that good. That's what I think, for real.
Now check it out. These guys actually go into a little laughing back and forth tizzy because he totally disarmed him.
Right, the nicest way to go about
it. It was. It's interesting. When he wanted to, he was almost like you took all the wind out of my sails.
No, because I smirked. I was laughing because I was like, Ben, sell the fight, bro. He's like, I'm probably gonna lose.
Now Ben is actually going to have to chime in and say, hey, wait a second. No, I really don't think he's that good, and that's why he's not going to beat me.
But he didn't say no. I don't think he's. Listen. There's a chance he's really good. If he's really, really good, he's going to beat me. I don't think he's really good. That's what it comes down to.
Why not?
But even that isn't enough. We're going to see George lean in now, tell him he should talk more poop, and then he's going to take his water bottle, sort of moving in and the joking. But we will see immediately afterward, Ben and Logan are going to get into a bit of a discussion. And you can see to the edge of the camera after he leans in and after he gets in Ben's personal space, because there is some tension, there is some kind of apprehension going on about that. He then seeks to comfort himself by pulling up both of his sleeves. And again, when we get that little fight or flight, our mucous membranes dry up. And right then he also takes a drink of his water bottle. Now, coincidentally, it's also right after Ben takes a drink out of his water bottle, which was just returned there. So he could be mirroring Ben, or he could be comforting himself after. But either way, it all looks really good for Ben.
I got it.
Because he talk shit a little bit more, man.
He beat up.
I'm trying to fuck yourself. You know what? I'm not taking your water back. I'm not getting the water.
He beat up a YouTuber and a basketball player who likely has never been in any type of fight in his whole life. So what about that makes him good? Really, though?
That's a little better.
It's right. My answer would be, did nothing he did in his last fight impress you?
It's like this. You wrestled, right? And you were actually relatively good. If I threw you in there against Jordan Burroughs, right? And even I'm really hell of a wrestler, I didn't have a chance against him. What would I learn about Jordan Burroughs? And the answer is I wouldn't learn much, because the discrepancy of the levels is so far apart, and you're not good compared to him. So I'm not going to learn much about him, right? And so if he had fought someone good, we're going to learn something about him. He fought, I don't even know what the first dude's name was. He was a bum. And the basketball player, while he was a good athlete, looked like he literally, the first time he got punched, there was just like, oh shit.
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels
and
like.
it was like, to me, it was like, oh man, that guy really never got punched before. Like he'd never been hit. And so,
surprise, surprise. Sometimes you don't know what it's like to get punched in the face until you get punched in the face.
Isn't that right, Dad?
Yes, it is. Quiet, kid. I'm just going to leave that in.
You know, when someone's in there against people of that level, I think it's hard to judge. Did he throw a good 1-2? Yeah, sure, right? But I mean, if no one's ever fought, lots of people can throw good 1-2s against them.
Now, Ben makes a good case here, and then it's going to go back and forth on just the credibility that Jake would get if he beats Ben. And Ben, again, returns to this thing that was also found when George St. Pierre just had his talk about pads and champions on the Joe Rogan show, where he said everybody looks like a champion when they're fighting on pads. And Ben returns to pretty much exactly that to show Jake's inexperience in the game.
It's hard for us to tell because he hasn't fought anybody. And so, hey, if he's really, really good, if he's genuinely good at boxing, he might beat me, right? If he's not good, if he's not that great, if he's not a high level guy, he's not going to beat me.
I believe beating you would give Jake Paul enough credibility to continue telling that story.
Sure. And so, I mean, we both wrestled, right? And so you could probably relate to this more. I mean, have you ever been at that tournament, right? And you see the kid kind of warming up, you're like, damn, he's kind of slick, you know? And you watch him drill and you're like, wow, he's good.
Yes.
And then you see him out there and then all of a sudden he's in the match and it's not going his way and he just does it and he's not the same guy anymore, right? He's a different guy.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm expecting, to be honest.
Now, Logan Paul has a couple of deep questions for Ben after this. And let's notice just how matter-of-factly he answers them and how he makes it clear that this is something on the side and this doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of pressure hanging over his head, which is something that they are really trying to get to with him.
Paint a picture for me.
Go for it.
You win. What happens to both you and Jake?
I don't know what he's going to do. So I retired from fighting. I said, if there was interesting things that come up in my future, I would take them. This seems like an interesting thing. Seems like fun. I got done with my hip surgery. I needed a reason to get back in shape. I was thinking I was going to probably do a wrestling match of some sort just to kind of have a reason to train. This came up. I took it. Who knows? Maybe I fight you, right? Maybe other YouTuber, or maybe I just go do a couple of wrestling matches. I don't know.
You lose. What happens for both you and Jake?
If I lose, I mean, I probably just go back to coaching my wrestling academy.
So whether he wins or loses, life afterward is probably going to be the same for Ben. And so he's not really stressing on this. But in order to try to find something, look at just where Logan and the guys go to try to point out something that you should be self-conscious about.
You wouldn't be concerned that the kids would make fun of you for losing?
They probably will.
YouTuber?
So yes, if I do get beat up, I'm sure the middle school kids will make fun of me. By the time they get to high school, they're like, you're my coach, let's get to work. You know, it's like,
But also by the time they get to high school,
So you got to wait a decade for them to stop making fun of you.
Oh my goodness, the kids are going to make fun of you. Now, I clipped and skipped around in a bit of these parts, but the part where it changes dramatically is where it gets physical for the first time here.
I don't really get to wrestle very often because I don't, you know, they're high school. Like,
No. I saw it. Please.
So Ben endeared himself at first, answered a few questions very matter-of-factly, knew he was the straight man walking into this whole thing, and really angled it to where now he's getting physical, pulls the guy close, and after this, they all have a huge laugh about it, banters more about his students and how that's dealing with it. And then Logan Paul makes a joke and pokes at Ben at his expense because, all right, it's broken. Our friendship rapport is now where we can start the sort of towel snapping at each other.
I saw that shit. How was it? How was it? No. How'd it
I'm
feel?
gonna rough him up a little bit.
He went here, and I go, I'm his bitch now. There's literally nothing I
I've seen him
can
crush
do.
Okay.
watermelons. I don't know how much you know about me, Ben.
Not that much.
Okay, so I started off making videos on Vine.
I've heard that.
So my career started in 6 seconds, and your career ended in 6 seconds.
And look at the way Ben handles it. He presses his eyes closed, smiles, and recognizes that it's a good joke and lets him know.
It's a good joke.
And then Logan asks him a question about the infamous knee knockout from Jorge Masvidal.
What was the last thing you remember
5, though.
before Jorge Masvidal needs you in your ear hole?
Now, because he's comfortable with himself, he can make
you know
jokes
what? I
at
don't
his
remember
own
any of it
expense. So when
really.
he's
I remember
answering
you
this
looking,
back,
making eye
listen
contact
to the
before
way
the
he
fight
takes
started, and then that's really it. And
That
then
sucks, man.
yes, it's not
intense
ideal.
law. So a self-deprecating joke and some laughter, and then he goes on to answer the question very legit. And this is what it was like to get kneed in the head and the aftermath. And the response pretty much says it all.
Not ideal. And then right, so I was obviously awake, but I kind of the first thing I remember then, I was in the hospital, and I woke up, I'm like, oh, okay. And then and my wife's there and she's like, hey, what's up? And then I remember like I remember like I didn't feel sore. And I'm like, I'm in the hospital. I don't feel sore. I'm like, this didn't go very well, did it? And she goes, nah. And I'm like, it was pretty fast, huh? And she goes, yup. I'm like, shit.
When you found out how fast it was.
I don't even remember that. I don't know if she told me that right away. But then, you know what's funny is when I like started clicking, it was like everything was. I never had a headache. I never felt bad. I went back to my hotel room. I went to my after party. All my buddies were there. I never once felt anything from it. So
well, he got you like in the neck, right?
Yeah, I mean, so that's what it looked. That's what it appears. I don't remember. I just told you guys that.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've seen the video.
Yeah, that's what it appears. Yeah, right there. But I couldn't tell you like from firsthand.
Does it make you feel a little bit? You don't seem to be too upset about the situation.
He's so transparent.
Yeah,
about
which is great. It's very hard to fuck with you because you're very open about everything. But like,
so they can't screw with him. Ben Askren is such a nice guy, but wait a second. In MMA, he was kind of a wanker. So they ask him about his trash talk in MMA, especially against George Masvidal, the guy who kneed him in the head, because it was really intense. And let's look at how Ben explains that and how it tells us so much more about Ben Askren.
Well, so the main reason I was talking so much shit was, well, number one, to sell the fight, obviously, right? But number two was I had to encourage him to want to take that fight. So if you remember, I had booked my plane ticket to London. Him and Darren Till were fighting. But right after that fight, George didn't want to take it. And, you know, I think he knew, like, I don't do well against wrestlers, as we saw in the Usman fight. And so, he was hesitant. And just like, George is not taking the Colby fight right now. Like, that's the fight to make. And it's not happening because I don't think George really wants it. And so I had to call him some names, and I made him mad enough, and then he said, yeah.
So it's not that he's just a crap talker. He's also a skilled manipulator because he is an intelligent guy. He wanted that fight. He knew George wasn't taking it, and he knew that calling him names would get him upset enough. Specifically, he knew exactly what kind of things to say to George to get him that mad, to make him take the fight. Stuff like, oh, he's scared because George doesn't like to admit or doesn't like to say that he's scared. He was scared, I think, against Yves Edwards was the time that he talked about it. But yeah, Ben just does what he does, and he is masterful at it, and he's really broken in, and now just having a friendly conversation, holding court with these guys.
Dana White.
Yeah.
Dana fucking White.
Your brother made Dana White like me. It's tremendous.
I wish I could say the same, man.
So they bring up Dana White, and immediately, without missing a beat, Ben's like, your brother made him like me. And now it's going to get a bit deeper because they are going to try to use the Dana White situation to apply pressure to Ben Askren again. And look at how he, again, lets it roll right off of his back.
So you just bet money on it.
Do you know this?
Yeah.
Do you know this?
Yeah.
It just happened. This is breaking news.
Well, he might have told me a little bit ago.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Dana White willing to bet $1 million on Ben Askren beating Jake Paul.
Yeah. So, yeah, Dana and I
obviously. Face, really quickly. Look at his face right there.
Any pressure?
No.
Dana White's going to lose $1 million because of you.
Dana White's got plenty of millions of dollars.
So, of course, it's not going to bother him if Dana White loses 1 million. He's got plenty of millions. And besides, Ben's not responsible for him making the choice to bet on him. That's no extra pressure. And now it gets really, really interesting because they bring up Dylan Dennis, and Ben knows that they wanted Dennis even before they wanted him. And the way that he brings it up, the way that he kind of addresses Dennis straight away in a disparaging sort of way, gets him on their side even more and builds even more rapport with the crew of this show. Let's check this out.
But then, I look at guys like Dylan Dennis and I'm like, yo.
Well, Dylan Dennis, but he's not even a good Bellator fighter.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like 2-0. Listen, I don't know what his deal is. I think he just wants to be a social media guy. He doesn't actually want to fight because he has fought 2 times in MMA.
That's what we've been saying.
I ask it curiously because I just don't know. Because I always ask that. I'm like, is he an influencer? Is that what his?
We don't know.
So after the Dylan Dennis thing, they have some more banter about everything that's going on. And the next really interesting part comes up right after they start talking about what Logan did in Japan that was so bad. And Ben doesn't even know about it. So they kind of pass over it, which illustrates the divide between Ben, them, and their audience. But he's still able to banter with them like he's one of the pals. So then he takes upon himself to start busting Logan's chops about his demographic and offer some advice to his audience.
It's like, Logan, look at me. This might help a lot. I know you got a teenage fan base.
That's not even true anymore.
This might help them.
I wish I had it. I'm trying to get Gen Z.
As Logan tries to say, no, I'm actually trying to get them, but I don't have a teenage audience anymore, because he knows that that's a soft spot with these guys. But listen to the actual advice that Ben has to offer, because it's awesome.
Here, I'm going to give them some advice. Listen, there's going to be some stuff in life that you regret. There's going to be some stuff that's embarrassing. Listen, you just get over it and you live your life. I'm going to run my wrestling academies the same day. I tell kids, when they're nervous about a big match, I tell them, listen, man, I had the most embarrassing knockout that's ever happened in MMA history. I'm the same guy July 7th as I was July 5th. What do you just shake it off and you keep moving?
Amazing. Great advice. And these guys can't even believe it. And then when they ask him if anything depresses him, he comes back with something that they all have in common as well.
Unreal.
I mean, listen, he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right.
He's so happy all the time. Are you ever sad? You ever get depressed about anything?
Maybe when the Bitcoin price drops to like 20% a day.
Let's talk coin.
Us too, dude. Us too.
It'll be back in 7 days. Just wait.
I was just going to say.
Unreal. Now, what was really interesting is just how much Logan emphasized the us too. We're like you to Ben. They're building such rapport. He's supposed to be in enemy territory, mind you. These guys are supposed to have their guard up, and he has broken right past that with his glowing, charming, Askren-esque personality, so much so that they again have to comment on it. This time, George, the guy that he already got physical with once.
Ben, I'm going to be honest with you, man. I really want you to lose the fight, but you're a nice guy.
It'll be all right.
And now I'm fucking confused. I feel like my parents got divorced and I don't know. Will I cry?
Here.
How can there be any doubt that he is now one of the gang? They are towel snapping together like nobody's business. But now that he's so close, he mentions something because he's talking to George about, are you going to cry? And he mentions when Jake cried to Logan Paul after his loss. And this is really, really interesting because Believing Bruce has done something specifically about Jake crying and mentioned that he wasn't really crying for Logan. He was crying for himself because that still wound up affecting his life, and because of his psychopathy, sociopathy, and generally antisocial traits, that it was a self-centered thing. And what's really interesting is even Logan says that it was weird. Let's check this out.
I was kind of emotionally touched. People are making fun of your brother. Listen, I've cried when my brother won, when he won the national title. I shed a couple of tears. It was very emotional for me to see him break through and win the national title. Jake cried when you lost. And, I thought that was kind of cool. People were making fun of him. I thought, hey, dude loves his brother. That's cool.
Saying nice things about Jake.
I thought that was weird. I thought that was weird.
He actually says it twice. And then Ben really puts into perspective how he agrees about him. And what this says about Jake is pretty darn wild.
I mean, listen, I'm not that emotional. I wouldn't cry, over because listen, you're rich, you're famous, and you lose a fucking boxing match. So what? Who cares? Like,
I think that's where my head was at. But also, I don't know.
I mean, you're rich, you lose a boxing match, you're still going to be rich. What's the big deal? But he doesn't know. But the problem is, Jake is looking at this like he said, this is the biggest thing in his life. This is the biggest thing he's faced. This is the biggest obstacle he's had to overcome. This is the biggest accomplishment he needs to have on his belt. This is it for him. And to Ben, it's just something that he's doing to get his health back on task after his hip surgery. Just something for fun if interesting things come along. So it really speaks of the pressure and of what we're going to see out of Jake. Because if he was that stressed about his brother losing a fight that was, even Logan thought it was inconsequential, but because of the effect on Jake, he just imagine what he's going to be like in relation to his own fight. This is going to be amazing. I mean, this is such a huge tell in all of this that's going on.
What?
He was drunk. He was fucking
Jake was wasted.
Trash,
he was
bro.
wasted.
I was with him. He's like, my brother lost the fight. Yeah, he was like, oh, no, I also really want some ice cream. I'm like, Jake, what's good, dog? It's not that big of a deal, Jake. No.
And I had to include that extra part there because of what Believing Bruce said about that being an ego thing for Jake, that it was still him losing that. And what's interesting is he's drunk and he's ranting about his brother's thing, but in the same breath as Mike's describing it, he says he wants some ice cream. And I just think that the inclusion of those two things so closely is really, really telling.
Oh, you're fucked, Logan. Look how small Logan's thumb is.
Look how calm he is.
It's pretty small, though.
He really is slow twitch, though. I can tell.
I'm just waiting for you to fall for my trap. You moved your finger. Stop cheating.
Groundhog.
One, two,
I'm in the
three.
ground.
I pinned you.
Well, I'm in the ground. It's
One, two, three, pin.
Just look at how friendly they've gotten. But wait, there is more.
No, raise my hand.
Groundhog.
He said race.
I think he's
definitely
not.
taller.
But it's not. Wait, hold on. I just need to...
So they're having fun together. They're snapping the towel, so to speak. And Logan Paul then gets into discussion about his upcoming fight with Floyd Mayweather. And they want Ben to kind of acknowledge that he might win, etc. And Ben speaks back on this. But again, he does it in a self-deprecating sort of way to compare himself to Mayweather. And again, gets everybody laughing.
Even if you were able to beat me up, I would still have no faith that you could beat up Floyd Mayweather.
That's what I was just going to say.
Here, Ben Askren, here. Yeah, this is not the same thing.
Floyd Mayweather here.
Two things are not the same.
The fun continues, and Mike then has to come in and try and talk up Logan as within the group. But it's even to the point they're so comfortable around Ben that Logan actually comedically lashes out at his own guy for being too much of a yes man. This is great. And it shows just how in control of the situation Ben is, because what's really going on is they're all fishing for his approval and his okay to say something about Logan Paul versus Mayweather. They're dying for him to say this and to come over on their side.
Ben, listen, we run a traditional fighters camp out here. Our boy Logan Paul is God. He's gonna win the fight and he's gonna crush him.
You're a fucking yes man.
But listen,
no, I'm
kidding.
You disgust me.
No,
You're
just kidding.
gross. You fucking
let's say he's...
And now look at this. They're totally fishing for Ben to give them somewhat of a chance. And Logan Paul even tries to parallel it with Ben's situation, that something can happen. And listen to how Ben logically takes that apart.
He's got 1% chance. Come on, Ben.
I mean, if Floyd had been knocked out, maybe I would agree with you. But how many times has Floyd been knocked out?
Ben,
one time?
Ben, you said it yourself.
What, one time?
You said you hadn't gotten rocked in the decade of combat sports. You.
Yeah.
Then something happens.
He threw, but it's a knee, not a punch.
Yo.
And by another really high level athlete.
What are we talking about?
Well, I'm just saying.
You don't believe in miracles?
So it was a knee, which is harder than any punch that's ever going to be thrown by Logan against Mayweather. And this guy that did it was a high-level athlete to Ben, inferring that Logan's not a high-level athlete. And please, don't you believe in miracles is almost all they've got left. And then the guy in the back mentions the Hail Mary pass, and Ben finally concedes. And look at how happy they all are to get Ben on their side here.
Okay, what would you do if you did win?
1%?
I'm on your show, so I'm not going to be. You have a Hail Mary chance.
Let's go! Let's go! And that's all we fucking need, baby. Give me it. 1%. Bet the house.
We all walk out of the
house.
Okay, now who would deny at this point that these guys are not having fun together? So they wind up talking for a whole bunch of time about Bitcoin and digital currencies and cryptos, and then they get into Ben's personal story. And then Ben tells him a little bit about what it's like to be him.
You know what? I may have Asperger's, but so I only have very specified interests, and I have a really hard time talking to people about things I'm not interested in. So when they're a wrestler, it makes things a lot easier.
Okay.
Now, personally, with Ben's masterful way of massaging social situations and his ability to hold court, I really, really doubt the guy's got Asperger's, but maybe he does have some hyper-specific interests that he tends to get over-focused in. But what's great about this is he uses it to explain what makes him comfortable and then uses that as an excuse to get physical with George right next to him again.
You know, and like, you know, if they're a wrestler, and I don't know if you just fucking grab them, right?
you grab
them up a little bit. You know, and they're cool.
None of you guys want to help.
And they're not saying help. They're not saying help.
I've been waiting for that to happen for a long time.
George, you're supposed to fight me back.
Okay,
No,
George,
stop.
What?
Fucking stop.
Don't do it. It's just going to make them more mad.
No, please. Georgie, don't. George, don't.
George, no.
George, stop.
George, please.
I got it right where I want.
Just try not to hurt him. I don't want to put him.
Did you have enough, Ben? Did you have? Don't make me give you more.
That was good. George got some power.
Now look at the fun that they had, and afterward, immediately, Ben's like, George has some power. He pays him a compliment after doing all that. And then George, of course, gets into what an accomplishment it was to wrestle Ben Askren. And look at just how friendly it gets.
I got put through Ben.
I think we're like best friends now. I might steal him from my show.
I'm not going to follow you on Instagram, man. You're a good guy.
So Ben pats George on the back, tells him that they could be best friends. He's going to steal him for his show. And George immediately busts out his phone and he's going to follow him on Instagram. Further evidence that he is so clicking with that group. But wait, there's even more.
So
good.
I'm kind of like you, but like I want to be more like you take shit like very calmly.
Yeah.
He's rolling with the punches.
Yeah.
We're like each other. That's why we're friendly like this, and we can understand each other. And I want to be even more like you. How great is that? But it gets even friendlier between George and Ben Askren. And look at what a sport Ben is in this now, because of course he just roughed up George. So now he's got to take it back.
I have not seen it.
Wait, what's it?
Oh no, Georgie,
George,
leave him
what's
alone.
wrong with you?
Leave him alone.
I don't need my hands. Do you even know what you're doing?
Now his vlog title just changed. I tapped out Ben Askren. Did you see it in real time,
Okay,
folks?
so now what do? I call other people out, right? This is what happens when you win.
Who do you want to fight?
I don't want to fight it.
So Ben Askren got tapped out and they all had a laugh about it. How great. And they're getting along this well right when Logan is trying to kind of close out the show and say, hey, I forgot. I have a message from Jake. And because of Ben's rapport with these guys now, because he has endeared himself so well to them, this message that Logan is unaware of, he got the message from, he's just apparently going to play it from Jake. And I believe that Logan did not know what was in the message because the reactions of these guys are incredible. And I'm going to stop it for a quick second and show you what their faces look like when this video by Jake is being played to Ben. It is absolutely nuts the way that Ben then actually saves the day at the end of it. And we're going to talk about that right after I show you this video that makes them it's as cringy as can possibly be right here. Let's check it out.
I almost forgot. Jake sent a special message. I don't know. I haven't seen it. So here goes.
Oh my goodness.
Here we go.
Ben, what's up, you ugly motherfucker? You middle-aged Dutch woman, ugly Napoleon Dynamite looking ass motherfucker.
He should stop shaking his camera.
I know you're probably sitting there right now with your little pedo smile, your little big-ass ears, your octagon-shaped head. You think this is a fucking game. You think this is a fun payday. You think this is a way to get clout. And yeah, you might be right, but I promise, April 17th will be the worst day of your fucking life. Just as I asked Nate Robinson's kids not to watch the fight, I will ask your kids not to do the same. So Ben Askren's kids, wife, please don't watch this because your dad will be bloodied, unconscious on the fucking canvas April 17th. And I don't want you guys to see that. I mean, you already saw him get knocked out in 5 seconds by Masvidal. I mean, your kids are probably going to school getting made fun of because their dad got knocked out in 5 seconds, and then he's going to get knocked out by Jake Paul. So please leave them out of this. You fucked up, Ben, by taking this fight. And April 17th, I promise to my team, my family, my brother who's there right next to you right now, I promise to make you go down in history as the world's worst UFC fighter. You're dumb as fuck, bro. April 17th, I'm gonna show the world just how big of a bitch you are. I'm gonna make you my bitch. I fucking promise that. And P.S. I know a good barber who can help you cut that Brillo pad off the top of your fucking head. Peace out, guys. Logan, what's up?
Wow. The discomfort, the way that Logan clenched his teeth and looked over at Mike, and that Mike's jaw was just agape, staring at Jake, making a total fool of himself, just talking all of these horrible things after these guys just had such a nice time with Ben. Oh my gosh. But Ben, like a true friend, comes in and saves the day before there is any awkward pause at the end of it, before they can even look at each other after the delivery of the message and go, oh my, well, he immediately starts talking. As soon as he said peace out, he's still in the process of calling him a B word. And he just starts talking and addressing like, well, and here's the brilliant thing. He doesn't just address the things with like, oh, well, I'm smart, not dumb. Oh, my hair is great, not ugly. But when he talks about I'm smart, he says his IQ is genius level. Now, I mentioned before that I thought it could be, but now that I've heard he tested it in a car while he was driving on an internet thing, he's probably in the gifted level, but probably not quite in the genius level, 20. But nonetheless, the point is he says something about himself, and then the genius thing that he likely knows is going to be disputed, that they're going to say, oh, like, oh, no, you're not a genius. I'm sure he's well aware of that. And that shifts the discussion from, oh my, this thing is so darn cringy, to Ben, you're not a genius. And then they talk about that, and it bounces back and forth a bit. And it's totally off the attention of just how bad that video was.
See, like, here's my rebuttal. I have genius level IQ. My hair is outstanding. What's the issue?
Neither of those are true.
I definitely have genius level IQ.
And his hair is pretty.
And my hair is outstanding.
He has some nice curls.
I have nice curls.
Nice curls.
And I definitely have genius level IQ.
What's your IQ?
Test me.
What's your IQ?
At least 160.
Yo,
No,
what?
that's not true.
What do you mean? I can't.
One time I got a 146, but I was driving the car.
For a second. And that is the part. You can't do an accurate IQ test online. You need somebody there. Those that you can take for a few questions have such disparate accuracies that it's not going to work. And to assume a difference of from 143 to at least 160. The number of there's so many fewer people at the 160 level than the 143 level. It's not like going from 90 to 115 or even from 100 to 100. It's just no. But with the disparity, I would say like 143, that's tough. I don't know if he can like do some third order diffie cues on the spot, but Ben's a pretty darn smart guy. And he brought this up, and it was a great thing to have and distract, because they've spent all this time talking about it. And now Mike actually pipes up and has to say something about how that video was just, oh my. And it's so great to see this.
Was that harder to watch for anybody after having hung out with this guy?
I wish I didn't play it at the end.
I kind of, I was like, should I unfollow Ben now? I just followed him. I don't really know.
Yeah, it was all harder to watch. And Logan said he shouldn't have played it at the end. Like, if he had known what was on it, he probably would have played it at the beginning so they could go over it. But then Ben addresses it super well, and like an adult would address that rant from a kid.
He's trying to be intimidating, but it wasn't very intimidating. I mean, I've spent the last decade of my life getting there with guys who like are real killers with 4-ounce gloves who could kick me or knee me or elbow me or really do anything they want. So the fact that, you know, he can just punch me, that's pretty easy comparatively.
You're not buying it.
No, I think in his head, he's convinced himself of a narrative that's going to take place. And he has to say things to make himself feel good and stuff. But yeah, very, very little of that was true. Yeah, I don't know. My kids have a great life. They're so happy. I'll show you some videos.
And he says his piece. He critiques Jake's entire presentation as his nest, and then ends it by saying his kids have a happy life, to transition to the things that really do matter to him, to shift the focus away from this fight and whatnot, to kind of illustrate what's important to him and what he really cares about, to illustrate that the pressure from this is not really getting to him. And look at how the guys have to close the show out because of the way that Ben handled this.
I want kids one day, Ben. I want kids one day. And you're so positive and happy. It's great. You can't. It's bulletproof.
It just sucks because I wish the problem with it is just like, it's so hard to like be Jake in this situation because everybody watches it and I think they're just like, damn, like Ben seems like a pretty nice guy. I'm like, why is this?
He's a genius.
Yeah, are you doing this on purpose, man?
Oh, fuck, he got it.
Fuck.
Thanks for watching Impaulsive, guys. You can follow Ben Askren on Instagram at Ben Askren and on Twitter at Ben Askren. Appreciate you coming on, bro.
You got it.
Yeah. We'll see you April 17th on Triller in Atlanta, Georgia, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I will be there.
All right.
I will be there. That's it. Hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time. Take it easy. Bye.
So Ben Askren may not be a genius, but that was an absolute genius performance. I honestly don't see how anyone could have actually done better. And for the guy to think that he's got Asperger's, well, I have a hard time buying that. I don't know how hard a time he has it, but to go from this most hated person to be able to navigate socially so that you are now all of us. This didn't happen by itself. This didn't happen just because Jake Paul is so hated a guy. That made it possible. But Ben carried himself like a master at the press conference and now here. And we are going to see some really interesting stuff at that boxing match because, yeah, the skills, there is a differential, but psychologically, we know that the differential is so heavily in favor of Ben and the experience differential. So we'll see what happens. I hope you guys are as excited as me to see this. And please make sure you hit the like and subscribe if you've made it this far in this video. I'd love to have you along for the other combat sports face-offs and all sorts of the other body language and communication analysis that I'm doing. So if you like it and you're interested, please click that like and subscribe and the notification bell and all that other stuff. And I will see you in another video. Thank you so much for being here. Hope to see you soon.